You think you know a person. You build a life, brick by brick, moment by moment, sharing coffee in the morning, coming home at night. You think you have stability, a foundation that nothing can shake. And then, one day, the person is gone, and you discover the whole time you were standing on sand. My world was Catherine. For 12 years, she was my home. We met later in life, both with our pasts. I'd had an amicable divorce from my first wife, Ellen, just drifted apart. No drama. Catherine was different. Charismatic, full of life, a whirlwind to my quiet calm. She was an interior designer, saw beauty and potential everywhere. I was a financial advisor. We were opposites, I guess, but we fit, or so I believed. We bought this house together, a charming old colonial, just outside Philadelphia. It needed work, but Catherine had vision, and I had, well, spreadsheets. We made it ours. It was meant to be our forever home, our sanctuary. Catherine had children from her first marriage, Carla and David. They were adults when I came into the picture, already in their early 20s. They never made it easy. Polite, mostly, but distant. They saw me as the man who wasn't their father, living in their mother's house. It created a low hum of tension, always there, under the surface of family dinners and holidays. But Catherine was the bridge. She smoothed things over. She kept the peace. She was the anchor. Then, unexpectedly, 6 weeks ago, the anchor was gone. A sudden heart condition, just like that. Grief is a heavy cloak. It smothers you. And then you have to start the impossible task of sorting through a life. Her life. Our life. Carla and David were quick to focus on the practicalities. The house. Since Catherine didn't have a will, her share, according to Pennsylvania law, passed to them. They wanted to sell. Immediately. Cash out. They saw it as an asset. I saw it as us. Everything we built. But I was exhausted, heartbroken, and outnumbered. I reluctantly agreed to sell. I started packing, preparing to leave this place, to shrink my life down into a small apartment. Going through her things was agony. Every item a memory. Her clothes, her books, little trinkets from trips we'd taken. I was packing up a lifetime, trying to be clinical, efficient, trying not to break down. I was in her study, packing up books from a high shelf, when my hand brushed against something, tucked away behind them. A small, wooden jewelry box. It was locked. I didn't recognize it. Curiosity, or maybe just a momentary distraction from the pain, made me look for a key. I found one on her keyring, one I'd never known the purpose of. The click echoed in the quiet house. I opened the lid. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, were jewels. There were photographs, a small stack of Polaroids. My breath caught, and then I saw her face. Catherine, smiling. But the man with her, he wasn't me. Seeing those photos was like being hit by a physical force. One moment I was numb with grief, methodically folding clothes and boxing up books. The next, the air was knocked out of me. Catherine, smiling, relaxed, in an intimate setting, with a man who was definitely not me. My first thought was confusion. A relative? An old friend? But the way they were together, the casual closeness, and the note, tucked beneath the photos. Just a few lines, in her handwriting, but the words. They weren't ambiguous. They confirmed what the images screamed. An intimate relationship, ongoing. It wasn't a fleeting moment. These looked recent. They showed a side of her I had never seen, a happiness that felt both alien and devastatingly familiar. This was my wife, the woman I loved, the woman I was mourning, and she had a secret life. The house, so quiet just moments before, suddenly felt vast and cold. Every corner seemed to hold an unseen presence, a hidden conversation I was never privy to. I walked from the study into the living room, the photos clutched in my hand, like a ghost wandering through the remnants of a life he thought was real. I looked at the sofa where we'd watched movies, the kitchen where we'd cooked together. Was it all a performance? Were the smiles, the quiet evenings, the plans we made, were they lies? The denial hit first. This couldn't be Catherine. Maybe it was staged. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. But the note, her hand, her words, there was no twisting them. And the man's face, clear in one of the shots. He wasn't a stranger I'd met briefly at a work function. He was someone she was comfortable with, someone she shared private moments with, while sharing a life with me. Anger followed the denial, a hot, bitter wave that made my hand shake. How could she? How dare she? Not just the betrayal itself, but the fact that she took this secret to her grave, leaving me not just with my grief, but with this shattering revelation, this poisoned legacy. And then the practical implications started to creep in, chilling the anger. Carla and David, the house, the fight that was already brewing. How did this change things? Could this change things? The structure I thought was just weakened by grief was now completely demolished by the truth. I stood there for a long time, the quiet of the house amplifying the chaos in my head. Grief, betrayal, confusion, anger, hurt. A poisonous cocktail. I looked at the photos again, and I knew I couldn't just put them away. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen. This wasn't just about her memory anymore. This was about what she had done, what she had hidden, and what it meant for the life she left behind. The life I was still living. This secret had consequences, even after death, and I had to understand them. Investigating the secrets of the woman you mourned is a strange, painful process. It felt disrespectful somehow, digging into the parts of Catherine's life she'd clearly chosen to keep hidden. But I couldn't unsee the photos or unread that note. It wasn't just about the emotional wound anymore. It was about the house, about my future, and about the aggressive demands from Carla and David. They called constantly. When are you listing the house, Alex? We need the money. You know, it's Mun's legacy. It should be shared. They saw dollar signs. I saw 12 years of my life, the garden I'd tended, the walls we'd painted together. The pressure was relentless, adding another layer of stress on top of the grief and the shock. I was trying to navigate losing my wife, while simultaneously being pushed out of my home by her children, all while grappling with the knowledge that my marriage wasn't what I thought. I knew I needed help. This wasn't something I could handle alone. I contacted Rachel Cohen. She was a family law attorney I'd heard recommended. Sharp, direct, but with a reputation for empathy. Sitting in her office, holding those faded Polaroids, trying to explain the situation felt surreal. My wife passed away, I started, and I found evidence of an affair. The words felt heavy, inadequate. Rachel listened patiently, her expression serious. I showed her the photos, the note. I explained the situation with Carla and David, their claim to Catherine's share of the house because she died without a will. Then I mentioned something I remembered from our marriage. A clause in our marriage contract, signed years ago. It was a standard infidelity clause, boilerplate language we barely thought about at the time. If one of us was unfaithful, they'd forfeit their claim to certain marital assets. At the time, it felt like a formality. Now, it felt like a lifeline. Rachel took the photos, the note, and a copy of our contract. She said she'd start looking into the man in the photos. His face was clear enough to work with. A few days later, she called. She'd identified him. Michael Grant, a co-worker Catherine had travelled with sometimes for design projects. The pieces started clicking into place. The late nights she said she worked. The sudden business trips that went a day longer than expected. Things I'd accepted without question, trusting her completely. Rachel confirmed it. The relationship with Michael Grant had been ongoing for roughly 2 years. The evidence was strong. Alex, she said, her voice calm but firm. Under Pennsylvania law, and with this clause in your contract, you have a case. You can challenge Carla and David's inheritance of Catherine's share of the house. Her infidelity, proven like this, could mean she forfeited her claim to that part of the marital property. It was a lot to process. The legal pathway was clear, but the emotional cost, fighting my late wife's children in court, airing her secrets, tarnishing the memory I held dear. Was the house worth it? Could I even do that? But then I thought of Carla and David's relentless demands, their cold focus on the money, their disregard for my connection to this home. This wasn't just about money for me. It was about the life I thought I had. And fighting for the last physical piece of it that hadn't been built on a lie. The decision was agonizing, but the truth, however painful, had given me a way forward. I told Rachel to proceed. We would file suit. The battle for the house had just begun. Fighting for the truth is one thing. Fighting the children of the woman you loved in court while exposing her deepest secret, that's another level of pain entirely. Once we filed the lawsuit, arguing that Catherine's infidelity nullified her share of the marital property according to our contract, the fragile peace, if you could call it that, shattered completely. Carla and David's reaction was immediate and vicious. They accused me of fabricating evidence, of disrespecting their mother's memory for money, of being a greedy opportunist. The phone calls started, the texts, not just angry but threatening, demanding I drop the suit, sell the house, or else. They were losing their inheritance, and they blamed me entirely. Rachel advised me to keep everything, every text, every voicemail. Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state for recording calls, but context matters, and threatening communications can be different. Even so, I mostly focused on documenting the messages and noting the times of calls. They were relentless. David's calls were particularly volatile, laced with profanity and veiled threats of showing up at the house. He sounded unstable, fueled by anger and maybe his sister's influence. It escalated to the point where Rachel insisted we involve the police. It felt strange, bringing this deeply personal, painful situation to law enforcement. Detective Mark Sullivan was assigned to the case. He listened carefully as I described the history, the lawsuit, and the increasing threats. Showing him the messages felt like yet another invasion of privacy. Mine, and in a twisted way, Catherine's. But I was starting to feel genuinely unsafe in my own home. It felt like my life was being dissected in public, picked apart by lawyers in sterile conference rooms. Was this worth it? The constant stress, the attacks from Carla and David, the pain of dredging up Catherine's deceit. Yes, I decided. It was. This house was the physical embodiment of the life I had built, the life I thought was real. I wouldn't let it be taken based on a lie, even a lie taken to the grave. Fighting for it, painful as it was, felt like the only way to reclaim my own stability, my own truth. We were headed for court, and the outcome would decide everything. The courtroom was quiet after the judge finished speaking. A few more legal formalities, handshakes with Rachel, and then it was over. The ruling was in my favor. The infidelity clause in our marriage contract was upheld, clear and enforceable under Pennsylvania law. Catherine's share of the house didn't pass to her children. It reverted to me. The house was mine, clear and free of their claim. There was no dramatic confrontation with Carla and David outside the courtroom. Just tight lips, averted eyes, and the cold, final silence of total estrangement. The harassment charges were still pending, but the main battle was lost for them. Our relationship, which had always been fragile, was irrevocably broken. There was a sadness in that, a loss of a different kind of family, even one built on tension. But the intensity of the fight, their accusations and threats, had extinguished any desire I had for reconciliation. Coming back to the house felt different. It wasn't just the quiet emptiness left by Catherine, but a new layer of silence, heavy with the echoes of the court battle and the absence of the conflict with her children. The house was physically mine, but emotionally it was crowded with ghosts. Catherine's memory, the shock of her secret, the bitterness of the fight. I started the process of sorting again, but this time with a sense of purpose, not just numb obligation. I donated a lot of Catherine's belongings, clothes, books, things I couldn't bring myself to touch. Keeping the photos and the note felt necessary, not as a punishment, but as a reminder of the truth, of what happened. Living with the truth was hard, accepting that the person I loved and grieved had fundamentally deceived me. There's no easy way to reconcile those two images. It's a scar you learn to live with. I had coffee with Ellen a few weeks later, my first wife. It felt surprisingly easy talking to her. She knew about loss, about lives changing directions you never expected. I didn't go into all the details of the affair or the court case, but I told her about the fight for the house and winning. She just listened, nodded. "You survived, Alex," she said softly. "You stood your ground. That's not easy." It wasn't profound advice, but coming from her, someone who had seen me through a different ending, it meant something. It reminded me that life continues, that you can rebuild after the foundations crumble. Being alone in the house now, the house I fought so hard for, I don't feel the crushing weight of deception as much. As a quiet solitude, it's still my home. It holds the good memories, the 12 years that weren't all a lie, alongside the painful truth. I don't know exactly what comes next. The future feels open, a little daunting, but also full of possibility. The truth cost me a lot. My idealized past, a relationship with Catherine's children, a certain kind of innocence. But it gave me back my home. And more importantly, it gave me back my own story, the real one. And for the first time in a long time, I feel ready to start writing the next chapter, right here. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more true stories of life's unexpected turns.